This is why Turkish might be the most overrated airline in the sky. They plaster the best everywhere, but does the reality match the hype? I just flew 4 times with them across the Middle East. Broken equipment, pain and discomfort throughout the flight, rude staff, and a shiny new airport that I actually dread going to. So what happened to this once great airline? They are the best in certain areas, but completely missing others. We've all had one-offs, but this will be my 10th flight with them. So fly with me on this journey, and we'll see at the end how they can become great again. I'm Youngmin. I solo traveled to 127 countries, all while working a full-time office job by maximizing my vacations and points. And now I'm finally on YouTube to take you along for the journey. Welcome to the adventure.
Prepare for landing.
I start my journey at LAX today for my 4-country adventure, including new country number 128 and 129. I'll take 4 flights with Turkish, becoming flights number 7 through 10 all time. I flew them 4 times for my Eastern Europe trip in 2016 and twice again in 2022 to go to Iraq. First, it's a grueling 13-hour economy flight to Istanbul before connecting to my first destination. You definitely don't want to miss out on the travel videos coming soon. Arriving at Bradley Terminal, check-in started off rocky. First, mobile check-in didn't work on my phone and not even here at the kiosk. It seems pretty common with Turkish flying to many countries with sensitive security, like when I flew to Iraq and I got the dreaded second screening. So even with just a carry-on today, I waited in line for an hour for the check-in desk to open. Turkish sent a text of what time check-in will open, and they still opened 15 minutes late. And when it finally did, I found that even with 3 flights daily, check-in workers were all just generic LAX employees, not Turkish. Check-in finished, and I don't know what it is about Turkish, but I had TSA pre-check on my boarding pass. But after I got to the front of the line, I was told that I don't have TSA pre and to go stand in the regular line. This was the first for me, supposedly having a fake TSA pre. Compression socks on for this long flight, and we head to the gate, which was luckily in the main terminal building, not the far satellite concourse. But I went up to the agent, who helped me find a seat with no next door neighbor, and he was nice enough to put me in a preferred seat for my next flight. Finally boarding. The flight attendants were warm and were actively trying to speed up boarding. Today's 2 Class 787-9 has 30 business class seats and 270 economy seats in a 333 configuration. First impressions, wow, everything looks sleek, it's new, that's the reason why I booked this over the 777, but as soon as I sat in the seat, something from inside the seat was poking my back, and I feared for the next 13 hours. Something was sticking out, and I told myself, this is just normal, But on my return flight, I found out, no, I had a broken seat. So let's check out the hard product. The IFE screen really stands out. It's super large and it's crisp. Over to your left, a jacket or a headphone hook, and the IFE screen swivel test is a pass. Now there's so much tech with the screen. You got your headphone jack, USB-C and USB-A port, and I love the physical buttons. Standard tray table as part of this fixed shell seat, which means I can stuff as much as I want in the seat back pocket without anything digging into the back of my neighbor in front of me. And the seat back pockets got pockets, 2 of them. And here's a pretty awkward legroom, but thankfully no bulky IFE box on the bottom. And the highlight of the 787 is the large electro-dimmable windows, but the controls are locked for now. Unfortunately, no lumbar adjust button on this one. And you have your standard up and down adjustable headrest. The pitch is a very standard and unremarkable 31 inches. But on this pretty long flight, this is meh. Checking out the IFE, there's actually a camera which they use to track you for wellness purposes. Lots of security red flags here, but I'll find it ironic later when I get scolded about cameras. But the IFE system itself was pretty impressive. It's in the Emirates League. Lots of media choices, TV shows. It's got the latest tech to pair your device to control the system. You got your various map views, and live cameras, as we'll find out later, but unfortunately, no tail cameras. This was really interesting. Turkish, a marketing powerhouse, made a really basic animation safety video, which I thought was nothing special. So we boarded late, and 50 minutes after the original departure time, we started taxiing. Now this was a very rare window seat for me on a long-haul economy flight, but hey, it was the only seat with the next seat empty. So today, I'm gonna soak up the views, and we got the heavies today. The 777 I took 9 years ago still flies today in a 343 configuration. It was actually surprisingly comfortable with a rare lumbar adjust button, but I pounded the melatonin each time, so I don't really remember much about the flights. But today, I purposely made sure to book the 787 flight. So all hands on deck, we're gonna see how this flight goes. I realized I flew LAX maybe over 100 times, but never got a view of the entire airport quite like this, so this was a treat. A short 10 minutes after takeoff, the seatbelt signs turned off. It was broad daylight, but they dimmed the entire cabin and then turned it all the way up 5 minutes later, which was perplexing. The windows were unlocked for adjusting, so I turned mine all the way down. To begin the meal service, they handed out water bottles and a menu. This is impressive and a nice touch, but it's also smart so they don't have to repeat themselves 300 times. And right after that, they gave out amenity kits. Now this is excellent. I only saw Korean Air and Singapore ever giving out amenity kits, but Turkish has the best in economy. My first thought is, man, that collapse in currency is making this flight premium. We have socks, eye mask, toothbrush, earplugs, and slippers. We were handed out hot paper towels, a lead move by the flight attendants to tell people to sit upright for the person sitting behind them. But I was in the front row of the second economy cabin, and when they got to me there was no more chicken, and all we got was pasta and zucchini, which is really boring. So I put them to Youngmin's ultimate test, and asked them for seconds if there's any available. And look at that. They passed. It was more pasta, but it was still good. My neighbor was sleeping, and the flight crew just skipped her without leaving any sticker. Then, when the crew came back to gather the trays, the passenger woke up and asked for a meal, which was delivered promptly, and it delayed my trip to the bathroom. At this point, my seat was killing me. I was in pain. Then I noticed my neighbor in front had a missing armrest. I finally get my chance, and I head to the loo for a review. We've got a nice touch of hand soap and lotion. Trash can stepper test. Pass. I head to the back of the cabin to get a view, but this one crew came over and told me not to film. I said I'm filming the back of people's heads for their privacy, but he still said no. This is ironic because Turkish is literally monitoring my face throughout the entire flight with the IFE camera, so that was interesting. I return to my seat and everyone's getting ready to sleep. Now there's a big issue with these seats. It's great, it's a long flight, but the recline is the most I've ever seen in economy. Like, to the point, if the row in front is reclining all the way, it's almost impossible to get out of the row to go to the bathroom. The IFE swivel is not enough, so I have to recline, and then the guy behind me, and it's a domino all the way down the cabin. So this is too much responsibility to give the passengers for this amount of recline. Now there is Wi-Fi on this flight, and even starts with unlimited messaging for Miles and Smiles members, but I need the internet to find my password to be able to log in, so hopefully they can fix this and make it easier. And just like that, our final pre-landing meal with actual cutlery. We have some pretty buttery scrambled eggs, but I was bummed there was no ketchup. We had cheese and some fruit, overall a pretty standard second meal, aka breakfast. As we prepare for landing, I think about my first flight on Turkish 9 years ago. That was the start of Turkey's long and ongoing economic decline, as well as a collapsing currency. Add that with rampant runaway inflation on the ground in Turkey, things get complicated, so most passengers may not know, but there's so much volatility and stuff going on in the background. Now I'm not an economist, but I definitely do know all these things impacted my flight today in good and bad ways. Now what a way for Turkish to wrap up their soft product. On top of this survey, the crew actually came down through the aisles asking for feedback and inputs. I found service across flights has been inconsistent, but today it was just excellent. For a second I thought, wow, what a nice airline. But then I remembered how my back was absolutely in pain, so I got my eye on the next 3 flights for the final review. And we finally arrived to Istanbul Airport, a huge upgrade to the old airport. Supposed to be better in every way, but the first impression was flying 13 hours and coming to a fucking bus gate. Same deja vu from 3 years ago, flying from LAX. This was an exhausting journey, and ahead of me is Istanbul Airport's notorious walkathon. This simply is disappointing, and just a poor overall arrival experience. This was meant to be the hub and the gateway to the world, but with remote bus gate gambles, you gotta have at least 2 hours for your connection, making the overall transit journey longer and more tiring. Later I'll find my buddy flying from Houston arrived at a standard jet bridge gate. We simply scan our boarding pass and pass through the turnstiles to get into the terminal. First thing, for Wi-Fi, I have to find a kiosk for the code, which is just cumbersome. And here it is, the scale of Istanbul Airport. An absolute commercial monstrosity of a terminal. If you're unlucky, it'll take you 40 minutes to walk from one end to another end. I walked 2 lifetimes to get to the other side of the terminal to see if I can get on an earlier flight. The agent coldly told me no, and I walked back the other way, to the A and B gates to find the IGA lounge, where there was a massive line, but I got through in about 10 minutes. Now we're gonna take a break from Turkish Airlines and focus just on this Priority Pass lounge. Outside is a wild Mickey Mouse land of shops and just money. And with no proper areas for rest, the airport experience just becomes exhausting. So thank God for this lounge for the next 4 hours to recoup for my next flight. This is one of the strongest Priority Pass lounges out there, and without it, I just might have to completely avoid Istanbul Airport. Last time I was here, it was midnight, and it's refreshing to come here for the first time in the day, but it's still the same, just absolutely packed. Even though there's a lot of seating, there could be even more humans. So pro tip, go all the way to the end of the lounge and you'll find more seating. So overall, a very nice time to relax and recharge. So is Istanbul Airport poorly planned? And is it not actually transit friendly? Let me know in the comments, because this will all impact our experience flying with Turkish Airlines. And now our second flight. Boarding was pretty chaotic. They didn't let us know and communicate when we're going to start boarding. I met up my buddy who flew in from Houston, and we were standing in front of the line just chatting away. And then 5 minutes later, I turn around and I see the entire cabin standing in line behind us. I guess they thought we were boarding, but joke's on them. We waited another 30 minutes in line before they just abruptly started boarding. So here we board our 8320 on to Cairo. Thanks to the super cool check-in agent at LAX, I got this limitless foot space economy king seat. It was a pretty packed flight today. Seems like no matter what Egypt does or doesn't do, it's still a popular destination. Another point of excellence, short 2-hour flight and we get a hot meal. Overall, this was a pretty uneventful flight. Short 2 hours, it should go smooth. I just did some work on my laptop and the time flew by. And just like that, we are in Cairo to begin our adventure, and we will come back on Turkish Airlines to fly back home. 4 countries later, including 2 new countries, I am ready to go back home. So this is quite interesting. I get to the check-in line, a lot of people, and there's a separate line for bag drop. So, as I normally do, I go up and I find there's actually a check-in kiosk right in front of the check-in desk. So I go up and use it and it's broken. So then right in front of me is a check-in agent who's not paying attention, not looking at anyone, he's just looking at his coworker's computer. So I told him, hey, can I please just print my boarding pass please, because I only got a carry-on, and he said no, go stand in the regular line. I've always been able to print my boarding pass when I do speak to an agent. It takes 5 seconds, but this guy just simply said no reasoning. And then I find behind are these machines where you can select your seats, print your boarding pass and all of that. But when I print it, what comes out? Blank cards. So then I go to another machine to try and print it and it says it's already been printed, so I have to go to the check-in desk. What a poor experience. My first thought is, hey, this is not Turkish home ground, so I can't complain. But I do remember Azerbaijan and Turkey are basically twin countries. There's really no excuse for Turkish here. So you'll see my travel video coming out later, but dealing with people here in this country was very difficult. So keep in mind, I'm totally exhausted by this point. The government website was broken, so I couldn't get a permit to drive and do a self-tour to my destination, and instead I had to do a grueling 16-hour group tour. So I was awake since 7 a.m. It is now midnight, and I still have another 2.5 hours to go for my flight. It's a 3-hour flight to Istanbul, 4 hours transiting, and then a 14-hour flight finally back to LA. But you'll see not only this airport, but the next flight is going to test me to my limits. Boarding gate, and I asked the agent, hey, can you print my boarding pass? He said no. This is the first time this has ever happened to me, especially when the kiosk prints out blank boarding passes. And also I asked if I can check the seats, and he said it's just all full. Well, I know for sure it's supposed to be half empty. He just says it's full, just trying to get me away. It's quite a boarding experience. Boarding started on time, everyone was already here. I was last to board, find the empty seats that the boarding agent didn't want to tell me. But as soon as I got on board, it is sweltering. It is heat like I've never felt before. Here's my fully functioning seat, but shouldn't matter, right? Because I'm trying to sleep, or so I thought. I had a full row to myself, laid all the way down, and tried to sleep, but no. I wanted this flight to end so bad. I was dreading this flight for 2 weeks, and it was as bad as I thought. This past flight I thought was going to be a sleeper, but nope, it should be a very easy flight to sleep. It was a 2:30 a.m. departure, 3.5 hours to Istanbul. I expected everyone just to knock out, but the moment you get onto the cabin, like, people are sweating, they're dying, they're visibly uncomfortable when they should be asleep. Only when I asked the flight crew, they turn on the AC, but it wasn't enough. As soon as the plane took off, I lied down in my seat, but I woke up because it was still super hot. So I asked them again, and they gave me a look like, didn't you see people here like breathing with their mouth open? It was not once, not twice, not 3 times, 8 times. Where they pushed the cart to the edge of my seat. That was the last row of the cabin, so it sticks out a bit, but still, have some care. They just rammed it into my seat, and that woke me up every single time. It was horrible. I was so sleepy. 15-hour tour, get to the airport, 3 hours there, and finally on the airplane, and I thought everyone was going to sleep as well. Why do we need a meal? It's nice, but at that hour, I'm sure 90% of the people would rather sleep than to be waking up with breakfast. Now, boarding soon. One thing that I can't get over is that while I was checking in, Turkish still charge fees when you're trying to design the seats. So I've seen other full service carriers do that. I get it. Ancillaries, you're maximizing your profit. But to do it during check-in, that's the level of low cost carrier. It just feels cheap to me. You go through 3 separate security checks. One guy checks your passport, then another checks something in the system, and then a third one checks your passport again, and then there's random security screening again. This is next level. Boarding started 30 minutes after it was supposed to start. It's now departure time and we are still not even on the plane yet. So on board our final flight, a 14-hour journey to LAX on the 787. This is just crazy, a different amenity kit. Same cabin as the first flight, so not much different here. I know what to expect. The only difference is that my friends flew separately to JFK, Houston, and LAX all on Turkish, and each of them had an empty seat next to them, but this flight was 100% full. The return flight is longer. There were senior citizens just standing up, blocking the aisle, and having a party in the back. I know it's a tough flight, but I think the crew should do better to control the chaos. On top of that, I had a pretty frustrating neighbor, so this flight was really exhausting. The last thing we need is we get to the gate and we're unboarding, and then they shut the doors, tell us get back into the seats. They close all the overhead bins, and then 2 minutes later, we were unboarding again. Just always interesting with Turkish. So I have to say, Turkish, man, they have so much potential. They have the foundations to be great, but it's honestly disappointing. It's frustrating to see them failing in such basic areas. Where's all that so-called self-proclaimed the best attitude going? I'd say the in-flight soft service is top-notch. They have all this equipment that's broken. Operationally, it's a mess. I was exhausted. And man, the new Istanbul Airport was supposed to be the meeting point of the world, but I just don't ever want to go there again. Either Turkish can remove all of that the best marketing everywhere, or they can fix all these small things and can become great again. Thanks for watching. I'm just starting to record my adventures on YouTube, so subscribe and stay tuned for lots more.